So, Tim Bielik, when you look at the Raiders' defense, there are some numbers that just jump out. They are averaging, giving up an average of 27.7 points a game, second worst in the NFL. You alluded to it earlier, over 125 yards allowed rushing, 26th in the NFL. Defensively, against pass, are a little bit better, 13th with 231. They do have Ngakoue, Max Crosby, who, like you, I thought they would have more sack totals. But when you look at this Raiders defense, they've lost 5 of 6, 5 of their last 6. They have dropped. Browns are going to have to be able to run the ball against them, and they're going to have to get probably into that 17, 21, 24 points if they're going to come away with a win, I think, against Las Vegas.
I'm with you right there. And, what we've seen from the Browns is I think they've tried to lean more on the pass to start games. I do think they kind of have to start this one leaning on the run game, kind of show the Raiders, at least in my opinion, what would be a good tactic is try and show them that, like, even if they're missing all these guys on offense, that they can still run the football on them, that Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson can still make some plays in the run game, which we know for a fact they can. And I mean, obviously, Chubb struggled the last 2 weeks because he went up against the Baltimore Ravens defense that is really, really good against the run, as we know. And this Las Vegas defense is nowhere near as good as that. You look at the stats, even from just the game they lost against the Chiefs on Sunday, 48-9. I mean, 132 yards rushing on 30 carries from a Kansas City team that really doesn't run the football that much. So if you're the Browns, you got to at least come into this game thinking that you have an opportunity to run the ball with some success, and what's the best thing to do against 2 good pass rushers? Run the ball right at them, really try and, make them have to make plays in the run game to force you into those 3rd and longs where Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue can feast on a beat-up offensive line. So it's just going to come down to, can the Browns win first down? Can they get themselves ahead of schedule because of the running game? Can they be effective? Can they rip off some big plays when it comes to that ground game?
Now, Derek Carr is a guy that has had some success throwing the football. It hasn't translated necessarily into wins, but he has almost 4,000 yards passing, second in the NFL behind Tom Brady, over 300 yards a game passing. That's also second to Tom Brady. Now, he has been sacked 31 times, and that's quite a bit, 6th most. 18 touchdowns, 10 picks. So, again, Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett, Malik McDowell, Malik Jack, all those guys, go get the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a formula for success for the Browns. I mean, just their ability to get pressure on that defensive line is going to be huge because you look at this Raiders team, Derek Carr has obviously been sacked a bunch. He's had some turnovers, but, he could still make a lot of plays. He's one of the more underrated quarterbacks, I think, in the NFL. And even though he hasn't had Darren Waller for the last couple of games with injury, he can still spread the ball around. I mean, you look at Hunter Renfrow, for example. I think people thought that was kind of a weird pick in the 5th round, and he's getting close to 1,000 yards this season. Not bad for a former college walk-on at Clemson. And the thing with Renfrow to me is the guy just knows how to get open. He knows how to create separation, and he could be a guy to watch on those 3rd and shorts because we know Derek Carr can get the ball out quickly. It's going to be on those corners, I think, to really, keep those receivers in front of them, try and not let those guys get too much separation, and really just to control those guys and make Derek Carr have to go to his 2nd and 3rd reads. And you hope by that point the defensive line can get home.
Well, and Josh Jacobs has not had the type of year I think probably the Raiders thought he was going to have running the football. Still a complete back, as Kevin Stefanski alluded to, and a good one, but has not put up the gaudy numbers that I think a lot of people thought he might.
No, he hasn't. I mean, we're also looking at a guy who's got, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I think he's been a better college player. I think he's been a better NFL player than he's been a college player. But it's hard when you look at the stats. I mean, his rushing attempts per game, I think, are down. Yards per carry are down. He's still scoring touchdowns, 7 touchdowns this season on the ground, already matching his rookie total. So, I mean, he's still getting it done. He's just probably not as explosive as he has been in the past. But, I mean, he's still a guy you got to worry about because if he's going, then that kind of takes – it's kind of what I was talking about with the Browns is if you can have that run game, take some pressure off a passing game that's already depleted. For the Raiders, it's kind of like, can you have enough run game to take some pressure off Derek Carr to make defenses not know exactly what he's going to do, whether they're going to run or whether they're going to throw. Those things kind of matter out. So they really need Jacobs, I think, to get going in this game. The good news is Browns have been pretty solid at stopping the run all season. It's going to come down to them doing it again on Saturday.
How do you think this one plays out? When you look at this, do the Browns get what they need, which is a win any way they come by it? And how do you see this one kind of playing out over at First Energy Stadium?
It's still kind of hard to see a little bit because, I mean, we still don't know if there's going to be more positives that come out in the next day or two. Admittedly, when I think of what the Browns have gone through in the last few hours of these positive COVID tests, my mind immediately came back to the Jets game because we saw the Browns struggle mightily against a really, really bad Jets team, and they couldn't really do anything in that game. At least in this game, they'll have pretty much all their units at least have a couple pieces as opposed to Baker having to throw to completely different receivers in that Jets game a year ago. So in that regard, they're better off, I think. But when you're missing tackles against a Raiders team that's got two really good pass rushers, you don't know quite how everybody's going, who's going to be available on Saturday. It can be tricky. I'm not ready to make a prediction quite yet because I kind of need to see how these things play out. But I mean, it's a tall task, even just to win a game. I thought they were going to be in good position, coming off the Ravens game, but this makes that task a whole lot tougher in what essentially is a must-win game. I mean, especially considering they have to go to Green Bay in a week. You have to go to Pittsburgh for a Monday night game, which could potentially be Ben Roethlisberger's final home game as a Steeler, and then you host the Bengals in the final game of the season. There's a lot of pressure that was already on this game. These tests just made it a whole lot tougher, and it's just going to be on this team to find a way to, as they always say, just survive in advance. You just got to find a way to get it done.